Okay. Hopefully everybody can see me and hear me. Okay. So we are module 4. And I don't know what happened to read and review. That's okay. All right. I don't know why that's not on this module this week, because somebody else emailed me about it. I don't know what happened to it. So I will find it. So just check announcements to get started. So a couple different things. Learning style. Just one main thing I want to say. Hold on. Did I hit record? I don't know why I can never remember this. Is it recording? 1 second. Hold on. Okay, yes, it is. Okay, here we go. I need to like write myself a note so I can remember. Okay, so learning styles. A couple different things is no one has just one learning style, nor do they have, they might have a preference. They might have one that's a little bit easier. It's not an all or nothing thing. And it doesn't mean, let's say for me, sometimes auditory isn't my most prominent one, let's say. But like I think kinesthetic is actually my best learning style. And just because I'm more kinesthetic than I am auditory doesn't mean I can't learn auditorily. So when we're looking at learning styles, there's kind of preferred ways of learning certain skills. So that's kind of what this is. So learning styles, let's look at the first one. So really, why is this important? And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide appropriate therapy. So we're trying to provide appropriate therapy to help them learn a skill, improve some area of functioning that's why they're in therapy. So really tapping in those multi-sensory experiences are super helpful in a therapy situation, as well as just your overall teaching. And when I say teaching, I'm referring to what I would call traditional educational practices. But really, we have to use a variety of modalities to help them gain the skills. And so multisensory learning, and that's really the key piece here, that really tapping into all the senses, all the learning styles is what helps someone, you know, develop that skill that we're working on, remember that information, and then also then access it and utilize it. So taking the learning styles into account, there's multisensory learning experiences. So there is what I would say literature about, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. No one's home at my house and someone was banging on the door. I'm rarely alone on Tuesday night. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the different learning styles. There is literature that indicates that this isn't a real thing. What I want to say is that we have, looking at kind of what helps us learn best, there's definitely things to say. And like I said, most research says there's not just one way, and that's true. So really, when we're looking at multisensory, so therapy activities should be utilizing this multisensory approach, and programs that are best on multisensory. So if you look at like reading programs or some of the other programs, they have that multisensory component. And really, this helps all clients, not just children, but adults too. And people have like a primary and secondary learning style, but it doesn't mean that they can't, those are the only two ways they can learn something. But really, sometimes it's about learning it and then accessing that skill in our brain, especially when we're working with adults with aphasia or traumatic brain injury. So if you kind of look at some of the research, so 80% of students learn under a visual or kinesthetic style. So how many times is once you like do it, you can remember it. So oftentimes you might be reading directions of something, and then once you complete the task, you're like, oh, okay, I can remember that, do that. So effective learning, we must arouse as many sensations as possible, and that stimulates different areas of our brain. And the other key piece in a therapy perspective is accessing that information. So you can kind of look through this. There's some good information. And a lot of times too, we're trying to help our clients access these skills. So kind of when you look at study, I don't like to say study skills, but really what helps them retain that information, and how helping a person understand that about themselves is also super helpful to know, hey, I need to remember something. What should I do? So the most effective instructional method for teaching all children is multisensory instruction. And I really should change this to all people. Really, that is also helpful for adults. So that multisensory piece, we do know there's lots of research that suggests that multisensory instruction is very effective. So you can kind of go through like auditory learners, and the thing I want to say is auditory activities, including reading, listening, hearing, they're not primarily auditory learners for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes, when I look at speech therapy, our clients for speech therapy, auditory might be an area of weakness for a variety of reasons. So definitely some key pieces to remember there. So here's some activities to engage auditory learners. So if somebody's really responding in the auditory mode, here are some things we can do. Activities to engage kinesthetic learners. So just so everyone's clear, kinesthetic is kind of that hands-on piece. You know, the manipulative. So you'll see that quite a bit. We'll see it in accommodations. Other computer programs that help people do things easier. What are some ways that we can use our technology to help us learn information or help us complete certain things? So definitely some ways to access that. And really, oftentimes too, when we're looking at brain injury, kind of doing some of these things. So like I said, a daily living task, the order and sequence of things is helpful to work on in therapy. So tactile learners. So tactile is more about the touch versus kinesthetic is touch as well as doing. So when someone's like, well, what's the difference? So tactile is definitely like how something feels versus how doing something. So it might include touching, holding, you know, moving, but kinesthetic is more about engaging in all the actions versus tactile is definitely how something feels. And you know, visual. So what are some things that help you remember? So some various memory strategies, they talk about picturing things in the brain that might help someone access that information. So for clients with auditory processing problems, the visual and kinesthetic channels are usually most critical for learning content. So we definitely want to access those, especially auditory process as well as hearing impaired. That definitely those are also you know, when I say auditory processing, any kind of type of auditory disorder. So not just auditory processing by itself, but hearing. Obviously visual if someone has a vision impairment, visual might not be the top choice. Maybe some tactile or kinesthetic things might really help. And I think when you look at some of the research that talks about learning styles, I think a lot of it kind of was limited And what I think I want you to focus on from this respect is what helps you learn? What helps you remember things? How do you access information? And granted, we all are different, but oftentimes things that you do that help you remember things might also help a client. So just really tapping into what works for you sometimes helps you also show someone else, as well as some other things. Hold on one second. I want to go up through this presentation. Oh, it's the same one. Hold on. Or maybe it was in read and review. One moment. Not the same one. No. Okay, teaching the skill. So the next thing when I say teaching, so oftentimes what we're working on with the client, so we're looking at kind of these multisensory experiences to help them gain a skill, recall a skill, utilize a skill. So when we're working with a client, it's oftentimes because they have a language disorder or delay. Client you're working with do not develop language skills in the same way that a typically developing child does. So let's think about that too. Oftentimes they're in speech therapy, language therapy, because they didn't develop at the natural pace or typical pace, I should say, or there's some kind of delay. Maybe this is a secondary thing to something major, but they're not gaining some of these language skills the way that other quote unquote typical or neurotypical children do. So you got to kind of sometimes think outside the box to help them learn this skill. And so main focus of therapy session often is teaching a skill that they don't have, explicitly teaching the skill. So oftentimes we're going to talk about what are we learning? You're learning how to use verbs. Okay, we're learning how to use action words. We are learning, spatial concepts, so where things are, temporal concepts, time concepts. So oftentimes we label what we're doing, and then really we kind of stay there. Sometimes it's usually gonna require more than one session. Oftentimes we're gonna be working on a skill for an incredibly long time. And what helps also too, when you're explicitly labeling something, that helps them remember, hey, this is my basic concepts, or this is my pronouns that I'm working on, or this is my S sound. So whatever it is that you usually kind of set the tone for what we're going to do in the session, what are we going to work on? And then obviously, maybe you don't do that with a 3-year-old, but I would say by school age and to adult, we're usually identifying with the client what we're doing, why we're doing it in their terms, obviously, and kind of giving them a terminology and language about it. So for instance, I'm working on a lot of like phonemic skills with some of my kindergartners, and I talk about, this is our phonemic awareness skills, so rhyming, and then we talk about all the things related to that. Like today I was doing blending of phonemes with some kids who all have artic issues as well as language and reading difficulties. And, I labeled something. Apparently the reading specialist, it's close, but calls it something slightly different. And we were laughing today how we all have to come together with the same vocabulary sometimes. And speech, us, we have 4 different terms for the same thing. So we got to work on that, especially in a school-based model, but even at home too, explaining to parents, this is what we're calling this is what we're doing. And the reason why we work on rhyming. So a lot of kids just rhyme for the sake of rhyming, but why is that important? Why do we need to know how to do that? So that kind of sometimes really helps solidify some of those things. Oftentimes we model the skill. So oftentimes we're going to give them a model, meaning we do it. Give them an example. Sorry, my dog's over here shedding and like hairs come in my mouth. And repeated practice. So oftentimes we need repeated practice and repetition required to gain and retain the skill. And that's true for children to adults. And then oftentimes once we feel like they have learned the skill, have accessed the skill, have retained the skill, then oftentimes we're doing carryover activities or supporting their their school-based team or their home-based team on how to carry over that skill into their daily activities. And again, that's case by case. And that's really kind of the component of therapy. Teaching the skill, making sure they've learned the skill, and then how to access the skill out in real world. So that's kind of those three parts. So when is the skill mastered? Usually it's when there's generalization of the skill outside the therapy room. So whatever setting they should be using that skill, are they utilizing it? Sometimes people are really great in therapy, but they're not able to do it outside of therapy. And usually that's because there's extensive cueing and prompting from the therapist. And really what we want to do is kind of reduce some of that. So that's kind of the next piece that I want to talk about. Let me go back to the read and review. And these are kind of what I would say, the nuts and bolts of therapy. We really want, let me see if this comes up. Oh, see, I can't get this. And this is like something that you, if you look at this card and it's got like least invasive to most invasive, most independent versus least independent. So you look at that full physical prompt, partial physical. Modeling is often where we start. Gestural, verbal, direct or indirect, as well as visual. So sometimes we're kind of looking at that hierarchy from most independent, least invasive to most invasive, least independent. So I like the way this is kind of color coded too. It helps me remember, visual, verbal, gestural, modeling, partial physical, full physical. So oftentimes you'll see stuff that's like maximum, moderate, minimum prompting. And this is kind of on that continuum. There's a couple different ones up here. And I like this. Here kind of gives you examples, most intrusive to least intrusive. And when I say prompts and cues, this is what we're kind of talking about. So there's really kind of, what are kind of our levels? The other thing I wanted to say too, it doesn't matter what age group or demographic we're working with, us as therapists have got to give some pause and wait time. I think sometimes we come at clients, we need to kind of give them something, give them a direction, give them a task, and then give them wait time. So definitely important, definitely crucial that we do that. Can you guys see this? Hold on, did someone send me a message that they couldn't see it? Hold on. Can you guys see that? One moment, let me go back to screen share. Can everybody see this? I think someone said they couldn't see it. Okay, you see me. All right, good. All right, so definitely want to look at some of those things in the read and review this week that kind of gives you some examples, some kind of hierarchy of levels. And at any point, you're not sure how much prompting to give a client, how much cueing, or what the level of support should be. That's definitely conversations you should have with your supervisor, because obviously everybody is a little bit different. So we definitely want people to discuss some of those components with their supervisor. Okay, let me go back 1 second. There we go. Oh, hold on, let me screen share again. And the last one I want to talk about before we log off. So this is kind of a nice little flow chart, so to speak, about fading. So obviously I like this because I think it really is a what I would call the Cliff Note version of all of this. you kind of have identifying the target skill. That's what your supervisor usually does in the goal. They identified what is the skill we need to be targeting in therapy. And then identify how the client is currently doing, where's their baseline. Step 3 is then compare the supports to the target skill. So they're able to do things, you know, what do we need in place to get here? So you kind of list out all supports that they need and kind of what does that look like? How can we get to independence? And then you kind of start there, and then we start taking away supports. And sometimes at some point, some clients are going to always need some type of support, but we want them to be always our optimal for our clients is to be as independent as possible. There are definitely some limitations to that, but really kind of we go identify the skill. Okay, how are we going to do this? Let's put all these supports in place, and then let's start, you know, scaling back. So definitely you can kind of decide. And sometimes you and your supervisor say, hey, I didn't give them this cue, or hey, I didn't model it this time. I just gave them the task. Can they do it? So for instance, I have a high schooler right now, and we're definitely working on what I would call daily living things. And it was so funny because the OT and I were talking about how a lot of what we do with our high schoolers is what we do with our adult rehab clients. And then my coworker, her daughter's doing a lot of the same kinds of tasks. It's so funny because I just made a picture schedule for laundry, and you know, I printed out an extra one for her daughter for at home. And really what I'm trying to do is, you know, we've done a lot of like supports with this person, and this particular one student that we're working with, you know, his mom is like, hey, I'd like him to be able to do his own laundry. There's something independently I think he would like to do. I would like him to do it. So we've been working on it. And, you know, it went from like full, completely 100% dependent prompts and cues. And then now where it's just like, okay, it's laundry time. And he kind of knows where to start, beginning to end. And we're just kind of fine tuning. But gosh, you know, he didn't even know what, I'm not sure if he even knew what the word laundry meant, to where now he can do an entire load of laundry by himself. But, you know, that took a long time. We're talking about a year and a half of time frame, but he's come far. And now we're looking at, okay, what's the next thing? So, and this is what we know now. I'm working with him. I know what works for him, what doesn't. That's the nice thing about therapy in general. Once you guys start working with a client, you'll get to know them. Oh, the link doesn't let you open that one on this one, you guys?
No, a couple of them it says unauthorized.
Oh, darn. Okay. I'll work on that tonight then. This always happens, especially with the docs. They want us to do PDFs. Hold on. Do I have it in PDF mode? One moment. Okay. There's some great handouts. So using the principles of brain-based learning in the classroom. And that's a free one on Super Duper. I really like that one. Okay, so there's a couple of these you guys can't. Yeah, I don't know why that always does. There's always a couple on when it comes up on the doc viewer. Can you guys open the JPEGs? Can you open the picture? Someone tried? Anybody know?
Yeah, I can open up that one.
Can the pictures open up?
Yeah.
Okay, but the one I just opened up, the fading supports, it won't open for you guys. It says unauthorized.
Right.
Okay, let me try again. I changed the format to PDF last semester. Okay, sometimes these security features and whatever happened last semester, some of these things are not loading. So, okay.
The prompting hierarchy reference card is also not opening.
Okay, reference card and the feeding supports. Okay. All right, sorry, I'm making a note. Okay, thank you guys. All right, we will try. I'll try and get that open. It's like I said, we definitely it's kind of a, it's a trial and error type of thing. It's not like, oh, hey, I know exactly how much prompting to do and how much less. It's sometimes, hey, I'm going to try this much. Okay, hey, they don't need that. That's great. So we're going to scale back, or, oh my goodness, they need a lot more. So we're going to increase the amount of supporting. That's really what all of therapy tends to be. How much supports and how much fading can we do? All right. And that's really this week. So this week is just a discussion board and your learning style quiz. Any other questions? Okay, I'll try and work on it.
Sorry, we're
No, go
gonna
ahead.
do, are you gonna put up a read and review assignment that we have to do? Or
It's probably going to be a real simple true false thing. I will. I don't know what happened to it. I apologize. I didn't realize it was missing. So, okay, I'll work on that for you guys. It's going to be something real simple to get points for this week. And it might be the thing we had in there before it didn't come. So, okay. Thank you guys. I'll look, so check announcements.